Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the small blue planet grow larger on the main screen. Earth looked peaceful from this distance. Swirling white clouds covered green and brown continents. Two small moons orbited nearby, and he could see the metal glint of human space stations reflecting sunlight. It was almost pretty, almost. "Sir, we are in position," reported his weapons officer. Behind them, 11 other massive ships of the hegemony fleet spread out in attack formation. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and built for war. Their dark hulls bristled with energy weapons that could turn a city to glass in seconds. Had done this many times before. For over 300 years, the hegemony had been expanding across the galaxy. The process was always the same. Find a primitive world. Show them your superior power. Demand surrender. Most species were smart enough to give up without a fight. "What do we know about these humans?" he asked. His intelligence officer pulled up a holographic display. "Single-planet species, sir. They have been in space for less than 100 years. Their ships use simple fusion drives. They fight with kinetic weapons and chemical explosives. We count 37 combat vessels total." Almost smiled. 37 ships against 12 hegemony dreadnoughts. It was not even a fair fight. "They have been monitoring our deep space communications for decades," the officer continued. "They know we exist. They know how this usually works." "Good," said. "Then they will be smart about this." The humans had built some orbital defense platforms around their planet, metal stations with weapons pointed toward space. They looked dangerous to someone who did not know better. 2. They looked like toys. His ship's shields could absorb their strongest weapons without even noticing. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." The main screen changed to show a human woman in a military uniform. She had dark skin and graying hair. Her eyes were calm but alert. Behind her, could see what looked like a command center with other humans working at control stations. "I am Admiral Sarah of the Earth Defense Force," the woman said. "We are aware of your presence in our system." Admiral replied, "I am commander of the Hegemony First Fleet. Your species stands at a crossroads. You will surrender your world and submit to hegemony integration. You have 72 Earth hours to comply." The human admiral's expression did not change. "And if we refuse?" "Then you will be eliminated," said simply. "Your weapons cannot harm our ships. Your technology is primitive. This does not have to end in violence, Admiral. The hegemony offers order and security to all member species." "As slaves," Admiral said. "As citizens," corrected. "Lower-tier citizens, perhaps, but citizens nonetheless. Your people will live. Your culture will be preserved in our archives. It is more than most species can hope for." The human was quiet for a long moment. Had seen this before. The moment when a species realized they had no choice. Usually, this was when they started begging or making desperate offers to negotiate. Instead, Admiral smiled. "Commander," she said, "I have a message for you from the people of Earth. We respectfully decline your offer." Now was confused. "Admiral, perhaps you do not understand the situation. We have 12 dreadnoughts. You have 37 ships that are barely more advanced than chemical rockets. This is not a war you can win." "Perhaps not," the Admiral agreed, "but it is a war we will fight." The transmission ended. Stared at the empty screen for a moment. In 3 centuries of expansion, only a handful of species had chosen to fight. All of them had been destroyed within hours. Some had fought bravely, but bravery could not overcome the laws of physics. Better shields, stronger weapons, and superior tactics always won. "Sir," his sensor officer called out, "the human ships are taking defensive positions around their planet. They appear to be clustering around the orbital stations." Looked at the tactical display. The human ships were indeed moving into formation. They looked like they were trying to create overlapping fields of fire around Earth's most important installations. It was actually not a terrible strategy for such a primitive species. It would not matter, of course. His ships could destroy the human fleet from well outside their weapons' range. "Sir," the sensor officer spoke again, sounding puzzled, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the outer system." "What kind of readings?" "Unknown, sir. Very faint. Almost like engine signatures, but not matching any known drive types. They seem to be coming from the asteroid belt and beyond." Frowned. "Probably interference from their mining operations. These primitive species often have crude equipment that generates electromagnetic noise." But something about the readings bothered him. In his long career, had learned to trust his instincts. Right now, those instincts were telling him that something was not quite right about this situation. "Tactical," he called. "Begin advancing toward the inner system. Maintain formation. Prepare to demonstrate our firepower on one of their outer stations." "Yes, sir." As the hegemony fleet began moving toward Earth, watched the human ships on his display. They were not running. They were not trying to hide behind their planet's moon. They were holding their positions, waiting. No species had ever done that before when facing hegemony dreadnoughts. Usually they either surrendered immediately or scattered in panic, trying to escape. But these humans were just waiting. "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving broadcasts from the human planet, multiple channels. It appears to be their leaders addressing their population." "What are they saying?" "Mostly reassurances, sir, telling their people to remain calm and trust in their military. But there's something else. They keep mentioning something called Protocol 7. We cannot determine what that means." Protocol 7. Had never heard of any human protocol by that name. But then, why would he? Humans had only been in space for a few decades. How many protocols could they possibly have? "Continue the advance," he ordered. "Charge weapons. In 12 hours, these humans will learn the price of defying the hegemony." But as his massive fleet moved deeper into the solar system, could not shake the feeling that he was missing something important. The humans seemed too calm, too prepared. Almost like they had been expecting this. Admiral Sarah stood in the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The room hummed with quiet activity as hundreds of technicians worked at their stations. Massive screens showed the positions of every ship in the solar system, both human and alien. 12 red dots marked the hegemony fleet as it moved past Jupiter's orbit. 37 blue dots showed Earth's visible defense ships holding position near the planet. But Sarah was not looking at those ships. She was looking at the small green light that had just appeared on her personal command console. Protocol 7 was active. "Admiral," her aide approached, "the President is asking for an update." "Tell President that everything is proceeding according to plan," Sarah replied. "The hegemony commander has accepted our refusal to surrender. He is advancing as expected." "In the Black Armada, ma'am." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "Right on schedule." 50 years ago, a single hegemony probe had wandered into the solar system by accident. It was small, no bigger than a car, and it had been damaged by cosmic radiation. But it was still far more advanced than anything humans had ever seen. The probe had been detected by deep space monitoring stations and tracked to an asteroid near Mars. A joint mission by Earth's major space powers had captured it before it could repair itself and continue on its journey. For 6 months, the best scientists on Earth had studied every component, every circuit, every line of code in its computer systems. What they learned had changed everything. The probe's databanks contained star charts showing thousands of worlds under hegemony control. They contained records of species that had surrendered without a fight, and species that had been completely destroyed for resisting. They contained detailed information about hegemony technology, military tactics, and expansion patterns. Most importantly, they contained a timeline. The hegemony expanded in predictable waves, incorporating new sectors of the galaxy every few decades. According to the probe's data, Earth's sector was scheduled for incorporation in approximately 50 years. The world's governments had faced a terrible choice. They could prepare for a conventional war they could not possibly win, or they could think differently about the problem. President Martinez, who had led Earth at the time, had made the decision that saved humanity. Instead of building more of the same weapons, Earth would build something entirely new, something the hegemony had never seen before. Sarah remembered the day she had first learned about the project. She had been a young captain then, fresh from the academy, when she was selected for a special assignment. They had taken her to a secret facility in Antarctica and shown her blueprints that seemed impossible. "We are not trying to match their technology," the project director had explained. "We are trying to think past it. They build bigger ships. We build smarter ones. They focus on firepower. We focus on coordination. They fight like a fleet. We fight like a single organism." The Black Armada had been humanity's answer to the hegemony. Not one ship or 100 ships, but a completely new way of thinking about space warfare. "Ma'am," her communications officer called, "we are receiving authentication codes from the outer system beacons." "Confirmed," Sarah replied. "Begin activation sequence." For 50 years, Earth had been secretly building and deploying assets throughout the solar system. What looked like asteroids were actually camouflaged shipyards. What appeared to be deep space monitoring stations were actually weapon platforms. What seemed like simple mining operations were actually the construction sites for humanity's real navy. The hegemony had looked at Earth's solar system and seen a single inhabited planet with some basic industry. They had no idea that humans had turned their entire star system into a fortress. "Admiral," the sensor chief reported, "Black Armada units are coming online. I'm showing green lights from sectors 7 through 15. "How many units total?" 2,437 ships now responding, ma'am. Still waiting for confirmation from the outer rim stations. Sarah nodded. The hegemony commander thought he was facing 37 ships. He was actually facing nearly 2,500, with more coming online every minute. But raw numbers were not humanity's real advantage. The real advantage was integration. Every ship in the Black Armada was connected to every other ship through quantum entanglement communicators. When one ship detected a target, every ship in the fleet knew about it instantly. When one ship learned something about enemy tactics, every ship learned it at the same moment. The Black Armada did not fight like individual ships working together. It fought like a single vast mind with thousands of bodies. "Ma'am, the hegemony fleet has passed Mars orbit. They are beginning to accelerate toward Earth. Estimated time to weapons range: 6 hours at their current speed, Admiral." Sarah walked over to the main tactical display. The enemy ships were represented as red triangles moving steadily toward Earth. They were maintaining a perfect formation, confident in their superiority. Soon, they would learn the price of that confidence. "Signal all Black Armada units," she ordered. "Begin Phase 1 deployment. Full stealth protocols. Move to intercept positions, but do not until my direct order." "Yes, ma'am." Across the solar system, humanity's secret fleet began to move. Ships that had been hiding in asteroid belts powered up their engines. Weapon platforms disguised as space junk oriented themselves toward the approaching enemy. The massive construction facilities in the outer system, hidden behind false asteroid fields, prepared to deploy their deadliest creations. The hegemony had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that a species confined to a single planet would think like a single planet species, but humans had never been confined to Earth in their thinking. From the moment they had learned to look up at the stars, they had imagined spreading throughout the universe. When the time came to prepare for war, they had not just built weapons, they had built an empire. Admiral President's voice came through the secure communication link. I'm watching the feeds from our orbital cameras. The hegemony ships are impressive. Yes, they are, Mr. President, but size is not everything in space warfare. Are you confident in our plan? Sarah looked at the tactical display showing thousands of green dots throughout the solar system, each representing a ship or platform the enemy knew nothing about. Mr. President, for 50 years humanity has been preparing for this exact moment. We have run millions of combat simulations. We have tested every system, every weapon, every tactic. The hegemony thinks they are facing a primitive species with crude weapons. She paused, watching as more Black Armada units came online. They are about to discover that humanity is neither primitive nor crude. And they are going to learn that the most dangerous thing in the universe is not superior technology. It is superior planning. On the display, the red triangles representing the hegemony fleet continued their steady advance toward Earth. They had no idea that they were flying into the most carefully prepared trap in galactic history. In less than 6 hours, Commander would discover what happened when humanity had 50 years to prepare for war. Commander studied the tactical display as his fleet approached Earth. The human ships had not moved from their defensive positions around the planet. They were maintaining radio silence except for basic military communications. Everything appeared normal for a species about to be conquered. "Sir," his sensor officer called, "we are detecting increased energy output from the human ships. It appears they are charging their weapons." "Let them," replied. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields even at point-blank range." His flagship was now only 4 hours from Earth. The planet looked larger on the main screen, and he could see more details of human civilization. Cities glowed with electric lights on the dark side of the world. Orbital stations reflected sunlight like tiny stars. It was actually quite beautiful. Soon it would all belong to the hegemony. "Commander," the communications officer announced, "we are receiving another transmission from the human admiral." On screen, Admiral appeared again, still calm, still professional. "Commander, this is your final warning. Turn your fleet around and leave this system immediately." Almost laughed. "Admiral, you have 37 ships. I have 12 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying your entire fleet. What exactly do you think you can do to stop me?" "We can show you that you have been making some very dangerous assumptions," the Admiral replied. Before could ask what she meant, his sensor officer suddenly shouted in alarm. "Sir, multiple contacts throughout the system. I count hundreds of ships." The tactical display exploded with new contacts. Red warning symbols appeared everywhere as ship after ship materialized from what had seemed like empty space. They appeared near asteroids, behind moons, in the outer reaches of the system where nothing should have been hiding. "That's impossible," breathed. "Where did they come from?" More ships kept appearing. The humans had not built 37 vessels, they had built hundreds. Then the count reached 1,000, then 1,500, then 2,000. "Sir, I'm reading over 2,400 human vessels now in the system," the sensor officer reported, his voice tight with shock. "And they're big, sir, much bigger than their visible fleet." Stared at the display in disbelief. The smallest of these new ships was larger than his own dreadnought. The largest ones were the size of space stations, bristling with weapon systems he could not identify. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence showed only 37 ships." "Sir," his intelligence officer said quietly, "I think those 37 ships were a deception. These others have been hidden somehow." The new human ships were not like anything in hegemony records. Instead of the bright metal hulls typical of most spacefaring species, these vessels were matte black, seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with impossible coordination, shifting positions as if guided by a single mind. Admiral called, trying to keep his voice steady. "What is the meaning of this?" The human admiral smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "Commander, allow me to introduce you to the Black Armada. For the past 50 years, humanity has been preparing for your arrival." 50 years, but how did you know we were coming? "Your probe," she said simply. "The one that malfunctioned in our system half a century ago. We learned quite a lot from it." Felt cold dread spreading through his chest. The hegemony had lost contact with several deep space probes over the centuries. They had assumed the probes had simply broken down in the vast emptiness between stars. The thought that one had been captured and studied had never occurred to them. "So you see, Commander," Admiral continued, "we have had considerable time to prepare for this encounter. We studied your technology, your tactics, your strategies. We know exactly how the hegemony fights wars." On the tactical display, the Black Armada was forming up around the hegemony fleet, not attacking, just surrounding them, like predators circling prey. "Sir," his weapons officer said urgently, "recommend we open fire immediately. Even with these numbers, our superior technology should." "No," said sharply. Something about this situation felt very wrong. Humans should not have been able to build ships like this. Even with captured hegemony technology, they lacked the industrial capacity and scientific knowledge to create such a fleet. Unless they had been planning this for much longer than he thought. "Admiral," he called to the human, "I propose a negotiation. Surely we can reach some accommodation." "The time for negotiation was when you entered our system and demanded our surrender," Admiral interrupted. "Now you will listen to our terms." The main screen shifted to show a different view. Found himself looking at one of the Black Armada ships up close. It was enormous, at least 5 kilometers long, with a hull that seemed to drink in light. Strange energy patterns flickered along its surface, and weapon systems that looked nothing like standard galactic designs rotated to track his flagship. "You see, Commander," the Admiral's voice continued, "we learned something important from your probe's data. The hegemony conquers through technological superiority. You build bigger ships with stronger shields and more powerful weapons than anyone else, and that intimidates your enemies into surrender." More Black Armada ships appeared on screen. Each one was a masterpiece of engineering that combined human creativity with alien science in ways the hegemony had never imagined. "But we realized something," Admiral said. "What if you encountered a species that had better technology than you do?" His blood ran cold. "That's impossible. The hegemony has conquered thousands of worlds. Our science is the most advanced in the galaxy." "Your science is the most advanced you have encountered so far," the Admiral corrected. "But you made one critical error. You assumed that advancement always follows the same path. Bigger ships, stronger shields, more powerful weapons. You never considered that there might be completely different approaches to the problem." She was right, and knew it. The hegemony had grown powerful by taking the best technology from every species they conquered and improving upon it. But they had always improved along the same lines: more energy, more armor, more firepower. The Black Armada represents 50 years of human engineering guided by a simple principle, Admiral explained. "We don't build ships that are bigger or stronger than yours. We build ships that are smarter." As if to demonstrate her point, the Black Armada began to move. But it did not move like a fleet of individual ships. Instead, it flowed like a liquid, each vessel responding instantly to the movements of all the others. The formation shifted and changed with impossible precision, creating patterns that would have required years of training for any normal fleet to execute. Hal whispered. "Quantum entanglement networks," the Admiral said. "Every ship in our fleet is in instantaneous communication with every other ship. They do not fight as separate vessels. They fight as parts of a single organism." The implications hit like a physical blow. The hegemony's greatest advantage had always been coordination. Their commanders could direct large fleets because they had superior communication systems and better trained crews. But if the humans had truly created instantaneous communication across their entire fleet? "Commander," Admiral's voice was now cold and formal. "You came here expecting to face a primitive species with crude weapons. Instead, you have encountered humanity at war. We offer you one chance to withdraw from this system peacefully." Looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at the tactical display with expressions of shock and fear. The humans had not just matched hegemony technology, they had surpassed it in ways no one had thought possible. For the first time in 3 centuries of expansion, the hegemony was outmatched. Commander stared at the tactical display, his mind racing. 2,400 human ships surrounded his 12 dreadnoughts. Every instinct told him to retreat, but his pride as a hegemony commander would not let him accept defeat without a fight. "Sir," his weapons officer said quietly, "what are your orders?" Looked at Admiral on the main screen. The human woman was waiting patiently for his response. Her expression was calm, but her eyes held the certainty of someone who held all the advantages. "Admiral," said slowly, "you ask me to withdraw, but the hegemony does not retreat from primitive species. Our technology is proven across 1,000 worlds. Your ships may be numerous, but numbers alone do not win battles." "Is that your final answer, Commander?" Straightened in his command chair. He had built his career on the superiority of hegemony technology. He would not let a human bluff intimidate him into retreat. "Yes, the hegemony fleet will advance to claim this system as ordered." Admiral nodded sadly. "Then you leave us no choice. All Black Armada units, you are authorized to demonstrate our capabilities. Commander, you are about to receive an education in modern warfare." The first lesson began immediately. "Sir," his sensor officer called out in panic, "the human ships are moving to attack formation, but I can't predict their targeting pattern. They're moving like they're all connected somehow." Watched the tactical display change. The Black Armada ships were repositioning with impossible speed and precision. Instead of the slow, predictable movements of normal fleets, they flowed around his ships like water, each vessel responding instantly to the movements of all the others. "Open fire," ordered. "Target the largest vessels first." His dreadnoughts unleashed their full firepower. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains fired in perfect synchronization. Quantum torpedoes that could crack planets streaked toward the human ships. Energy weapons that had never failed to penetrate enemy shields blazed across space. Every shot hit its target, and every shot simply vanished. The plasma beams struck the black hulls of the human ships and disappeared, absorbed like light into a void. The quantum torpedoes exploded against the strange armor plating and left no marks. The energy weapons struck and seemed to feed power into the ships rather than damage them. "Impossible," breathed. "Sir," his science officer reported, "the human ships appear to be absorbing our weapons' fire. The energy is not being blocked or deflected, it's being captured and stored somehow." Admiral's voice came through the communication system. "Lesson 1, Commander. Human engineering does not try to stop energy, we redirect it. Your weapons are now powering our ships." The second lesson followed immediately. Without warning, space around's fleet began to change. Reality seemed to bend and twist as gravitational fields stronger than those around planets suddenly appeared. 3 of his dreadnoughts found themselves caught in gravity wells that should not have existed. "Gravitational weapons," his science officer gasped. "They're creating artificial black holes." Watched in horror as one of his ships was crushed into a ball of metal the size of a house. The artificial singularity lasted only seconds before dissipating, but it was long enough to completely destroy a vessel that had been thought indestructible. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer shouted. Our shields are useless against gravitational forces. Lesson 2, Admiral announced. Humans do not just build bigger weapons, we build different weapons. Your shields protect against energy and matter, they do nothing against gravity. The third lesson was the most terrifying of all. The Black Armada suddenly stopped moving. For a moment, the human ships hung motionless in space around the hegemony fleet. Then they began to emit a strange field that spread outward like ripples in water. "Sir, our weapons are offline," the weapons officer reported in panic. "Our shields are failing," called the defensive systems operator. "Our engines are losing power," shouted the engineering chief. One by one, every system on every hegemony ship began to shut down, not damaged or destroyed, but simply stopped, as if the technology itself had forgotten how to function. "What's happening?" demanded. His science officer was frantically checking readings. "Sir, the humans are generating some kind of field that disrupts the quantum foundations of our technology. Our computers, our weapons, our shields, they all depend on quantum processors. The field is making them non-functional." Two more of ships went completely dark, floating helplessly in space like dead metal asteroids. Their crews were alive, but their vessels had become nothing more than giant coffins. "Lesson 3, Admiral said, her voice now echoing through the communication systems of the dead ships. "Human technology does not fight your technology. It simply makes your technology irrelevant." Felt despair creeping into his mind. In the space of minutes, he had lost half his fleet to weapons he had never imagined could exist. The remaining ships were crippled and helpless. But the most frightening thing was not the power of the human weapons. It was how they used them. The Black Armada had not simply attacked with overwhelming force. They had demonstrated each method by which the hegemony could be destroyed, in order of increasing sophistication. First, energy absorption to show that hegemony weapons were useless. Then gravitational weapons to show that hegemony defenses were irrelevant. Finally, technological disruption to show that hegemony systems could be turned off like light switches. It was not just a military defeat. It was a lesson designed to show exactly how outmatched the hegemony truly was. "Commander," Admiral's voice was now formal and cold, "you have witnessed Article 1 of our military doctrine, the demonstration of capability. You have seen that your weapons cannot harm our ships, your defenses cannot protect your ships, and your technology can be disabled at our discretion." The tactical display now showed only 7 functional hegemony vessels out of the original 12. The human fleet remained untouched, their black ships moving in perfect formation around the wreckage of hegemony pride. "We now offer you Article 2 of our doctrine, the opportunity for mercy. You may withdraw your remaining ships from this system. Your crews will be allowed to live. Your vessels will be allowed to depart." Looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at him with expressions of fear and desperate hope. They had families back in hegemony space. They wanted to live. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. "Then you will experience Article 3 of our doctrine," Admiral replied. "Total annihilation. Commander, I have shown you 3 different ways we can destroy your ships. We have 17 more methods we have not yet demonstrated. Some of them would leave no trace that your fleet ever existed." The weight of defeat settled on shoulders. He had come here expecting to add another easy conquest to his record. Instead, he had encountered something completely beyond his understanding. A species that had not just matched the hegemony's power, but had redefined what power meant. "Admiral," he said finally, I accept your terms." The relief on his bridge was visible. His surviving crew members slumped in their chairs, grateful to be alive. "You will withdraw immediately from this system," Admiral ordered. "Your weapons will remain offline until you pass beyond our outer monitoring stations. Any attempt to send signals to hegemony space before you leave will result in the immediate destruction of your fleet." Understood, replied. As his crippled ships began their shameful retreat from Earth, realized that everything had changed. The hegemony had built their empire on the assumption that they were the most advanced species in the galaxy. They had just learned that assumption was terribly, dangerously wrong. And somewhere in the depths of space, the rest of the hegemony was about to learn that the age of easy conquest was over. 3 weeks after the battle at Earth, High Commander stood before the Hegemony Council on the capital world of. The massive chamber was filled with representatives from 1,000 conquered species, all of them listening in stunned silence as she read the report from Commander's surviving fleet. The human species possesses technology that exceeds our own, she announced, her voice echoing through the hall. They have weapons that absorb our energy attacks and use them for power. They have gravitational devices that can create artificial black holes. Most disturbing of all, they have developed methods to disable our quantum-based technology entirely. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the council chamber. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had been unstoppable. The idea that a single-planet species could defeat their finest fleet was almost impossible to accept. Furthermore, High Commander continued, their fleet coordination exceeds anything in our experience. They do not fight as individual ships, but as a single networked entity. Every vessel knows instantly what every other vessel is doing. They responded to our tactics faster than we could execute them. Supreme Chancellor Al, leader of the hegemony, leaned forward in his throne. How many ships did they deploy against our fleet? Over 2,400 vessels, Supreme Chancellor, all of them larger and more advanced than our dreadnoughts. The chamber fell completely silent. 2,000 ships was more than the hegemony deployed for major sector conquests. For a species confined to one star system to have built such a fleet was beyond belief. How is this possible? Chancellor Al demanded. Our intelligence reported only primitive technology and minimal space-based infrastructure. They deceived us, Supreme Chancellor. For 50 years, they have been secretly building their true fleet while showing us only obsolete vessels. They have turned their entire star system into a military fortress without our knowledge. Chancellor Al was quiet for a long moment. Around the chamber, representatives from conquered species were beginning to whisper among themselves. The hegemony's reputation for invincibility had just been shattered in front of their subjects. What are your tactical recommendations, High Commander? Had been dreading this question. Supreme Chancellor, I recommend we avoid all contact with human space until we can develop countermeasures for their technology. A direct military confrontation would result in catastrophic losses for our forces. More whispers filled the chamber. The hegemony had never before avoided confrontation with any species. Are you suggesting we abandon expansion into that sector entirely? I am suggesting, Supreme Chancellor, that we reconsider our entire approach to expansion. The humans have demonstrated that our assumption of technological superiority may not always be valid. We may encounter other species that have developed along different technological paths. On Earth, President stood before a joint session of the World Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation on the planet. Behind her, a massive display showed images of the Black Armada in formation around Earth. 3 weeks ago, she announced, humanity faced its greatest test. An alien empire that has conquered thousands of worlds came to our solar system and demanded our surrender. Today, that empire is in full retreat and humanity remains free. The assembly erupted in cheers. It had been 3 weeks since the victory, but the celebration still continued across the planet. Humanity had not only survived first contact with a hostile alien species, they had won decisively. But our victory brings new responsibilities, President continued as the cheering died down. We are no longer isolated in the universe. Our actions today will determine what kind of galactic civilization we help to create. Admiral Sarah stepped up to the podium beside the president. The Black Armada has established monitoring stations throughout our local region of space, she announced. Any attempt by the hegemony or other hostile forces to approach our system will be detected long before they arrive. Earth is now the most defended world in known space. But defense alone is not enough, President added. We have learned from the hegemony's own records that thousands of species live under their control. Many of them never chose to be conquered. We will not stand by while sentient beings suffer under tyranny. She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the assembly and to the billions watching around the world. Today, I am announcing the formation of the Terran Defense Alliance. Any species that wishes to live free from hegemony control will find sanctuary and protection under our banner. Humanity will not become an empire like the hegemony. We will become something better, a beacon of freedom for all who seek it. Admiral activated a holographic display that showed star charts extending far beyond Earth's solar system. The Black Armada is already beginning expansion operations. We are establishing defense stations and patrol routes throughout this sector of space. Our message to the galaxy is simple. There is now an alternative to hegemony rule. In the depths of space, Commander's surviving ships limped toward the nearest hegemony outpost. Half his fleet had been destroyed or disabled by human weapons. The other half had been allowed to retreat only because the humans chose mercy over annihilation. As his ships passed through hyperspace, thought about the report he would have to deliver to High Command. The hegemony had encountered something completely unprecedented, a species that had not only resisted conquest but had proven themselves superior in every aspect of warfare. But the military defeat was not the worst news he would have to report. The worst news was what Admiral had told him during his retreat. "Commander," she had said, "when you return to hegemony space, you will deliver a message from humanity. The age of conquest is over. Any species that wishes freedom from hegemony rule can find it under human protection. We will not expand through conquest as you have done, but we will defend any who ask for our help." The implications were staggering. For 3 centuries, the hegemony had expanded through intimidation and superior technology. Now they faced an enemy that could not be intimidated and whose technology was clearly superior. Worse, the humans were offering an alternative to hegemony rule to every conquered species in the galaxy. How many worlds might choose freedom if they believed they could be protected from hegemony retaliation? As his damaged fleet continued its retreat, realized he was carrying more than news of a military defeat. He was carrying news that would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. On Earth, in the secret command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral watched the status displays showing Black Armada deployments throughout the solar system and beyond. The victory over the hegemony had been decisive, but it was only the beginning. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "we're receiving signals from 17 different star systems. They appear to be requests for assistance." Sarah smiled. "It's beginning," she said quietly. She activated her command console and opened a channel to Fleet Command. "All Black Armada units, this is Admiral. Begin Phase 2 operations. We have work to do." Across the solar system, the ships of humanity's secret fleet began powering up their hyperspace drives. They had defended Earth successfully. Now it was time to carry that defense to others who needed it. The hegemony had built an empire through conquest and intimidation, but humanity would build something different, a coalition of free species united not by conquest, but by choice. The galaxy was about to learn that the strongest force in the universe was not superior technology or overwhelming firepower. It was the simple human idea that every thinking being deserved to be free. And humanity was willing to fight for that idea, no matter what the cost.